Hey guys, Dwayne here. Today I want to talk a little bit about when you're actually being accused of being the abuser. I think it's a typical thing that we all go through, where your abuser actually starts trying to turn the tables and blaming you for doing basically what they're doing. So in this video, I'm going to talk a little bit about what it means, why it bothers us, and what are the things that we can actually do to try to deal with it, overcome it, understand it, and basically move on from it. All right, so what does it mean? I mean, what does it mean whenever your abusive ex is turning around and saying that you're the narcissist, you're the one who's being emotionally abusive, and telling everyone, that part of that whole smear campaign when they're trying to destroy your character and they're trying to turn people against you. And you'll either hear it directly, because they'll either say it directly to you, or you'll hear it from other people who've been told it and are telling you what's going on, right? And the first thing is, your ex basically believes what they're saying, right? They're probably, well, not probably, they are projecting their own insecurities and their own issues onto you, and they're thinking that you're actually doing the exact same thing. And it can drive you crazy, because you can have a conversation where you can say one thing, you're like, well, we need to focus on what's the best interest for the kids. And then this isn't them saying that you're the narcissist, but it's just an example. And then they'll write back and they'll say, yeah, we need to do that. And then you're like, wait, what? So it's along the same lines, because then they'll turn around and they'll say, well, you're the abusive, you're controlling, you're this, you're that, and a lot of that comes from whenever you start establishing boundaries. Well, you're doing something different than you have in the past. And to them, it is controlling, because you are trying to control them, because in the past they were able to control you. But the issue with it is that it drives an emotional reaction from us, right? Because whenever someone says something like that, you're like, what? And bottom line, so which that kind of rolls into, so why does it bother us? Why are we even hurt by some nonsensical comments that your ex is actually saying about you? Well, the deal is that you're in the beginning stages of it, when you're still trying to deal with it and you're still trying to wrap your head around it. And even whenever you have some time under your belt on it, when they start saying stuff where they're blaming you, or they're saying that you are being emotionally abusive, well, the first thing is it's hurtful, right? Because if you're at this channel and you're watching this stuff, then you are trying to understand what you're going through. You're trying to understand what you've endured. And I mean, similarly to the video that I talked about, are you the narcissist? Because that's another thing, a very common thing that we go through. See, now here's the issue with this, right? Even if somebody doesn't blame us for being abusive, if your ex hasn't done that yet, we all go through this phase, especially when we start learning about this, where we're like, well, I've kind of done a few of those things. Maybe I am, right? And this isn't this. I did a whole nother video about if you're, if you think you're the narcissist, or am I the narcissist? But bottom line is, like I said, it's hurtful. You're afraid that people are going to believe it, right? When these accusations starts coming out, and you're like, oh my God, are people going to actually think that this is what I did, and that I was abusive, and that's are they going to believe it? I mean, so we're worried about that. Then we even run through this. If you haven't already gone through the, where you're questioning yourself, you do question you, right? If someone else says that and they start saying, well, you're the abusive one, you can, at some point, that little seed is going to burrow into your head, and you're going to question yourself, and the other thing on this, and the final thing on why it really bothers us, and this I specifically dealt with, is it's not fair that they get to play the victim. You're being victimized through the process, and cast as something that you're not, and you're being abused by the system, you're being abused by your ex, and all this stuff is going on. And when you hear that they turn around and they're saying that you were abusive and that you were a bad parent and that you were this horrible person that just, was difficult to live with, it really messes with your head, because, then you're thinking it's not fair. You don't get to play the victim card, right? It's kind of what you think. I know that's the way I felt about it. And then you run through your head the scenarios where, what's the typical thing someone says in an abusive relationship? Well, you didn't have to live with them. You only saw them in public, right? I mean, so then that rolls back into where you're concerned about what they're saying and what people believe. And, you get rolled into this scenario where you feel like you have to defend yourself, right? And okay, so that rolls into the next part of this, is like, what can you do about it? What can we do about it? Unfortunately, there really isn't much that we can do, right? And you're like, well, wait a minute. Well, what does that mean? Which is a valid question. And what I mean by that is, you can engage in a full-fledged attack to try to defend yourself or dispel those accusations that are being made against you. If they're just saying it to you, that's one thing, and you're engaging at it from a tit for tat type of situation with your ex. But as soon as you realize that they're actually saying something about it, and to other people besides just you, you can get into a situation where you're really worried and you want to defend yourself. And like I said, full-fledged attacks generally are not really useful, right? And because whenever you start saying that, then you start falling into acting a little more edgy, a little more stressed out, a little more out of control, a little more emotional instead of rational, and people can start questioning what's really going on. It's like, well, maybe it's true, maybe it's not true. They don't know, right? So, which then which then rolls into a mantra that I've been talking about through a lot of these videos, is your best bet in these situations is to demonstrate through action that you aren't. Don't engage in trying to smear the other person. Don't engage in the discussion with it. Just let it go, right? And demonstrate through action that you're not an abusive person, that you you could, if you're talking to someone else, say, and you know what, you could actually do this talking to your ex as well. Say, you know what, I don't necessarily agree with that, but, I'm working on myself to make myself better. And, if there's some criticism that you have that you want to enumerate, please feel free to share it with me, and I'll work with my therapist to make sure that if I have done anything like that I'm working not against it, but working to improve myself, right? And you can even say that if someone else is saying, oh, they're saying that, and it's like, well, what have I done? But you can't be like, well, what have I done? What have I done to be abusive? You don't want to do that. You want to be more rational, right? You want to take the emotion out of the discussion and the narrative and be rational. Because rational people generally don't look like they're out of control, right? And that's kind of where you're at. And that's to key in on that point. You're demonstrating through action that you aren't abusive, and that this isn't really an accurate representation of yourself. And ultimately on this, and we've talked about this a lot, guys, and you know this, their mask will slip, and they will expose themselves. It's, in the last almost 5 years that I've been going through this, Okay, so full disclosure, in all honesty, I have not always followed this advice. And I have gotten into discussions that I really shouldn't have. And like I said, it's tough because you want to defend yourself. You want to disprove those rumors and those lies, and you get stuck in wanting to deal with that. But it doesn't serve any purpose. But what I will tell you is that even in those times where I said that, the mask does slip and they expose themselves. And in the instances where I have followed this advice and haven't engaged, and typically this normally happens in my situation with the kids' friends' parents, right? Because since it's a 50-50 thing, most of those parents end up engaging with both of us, right? So all I have to do is just be myself, my friendly, happy self. Well, maybe I'm not always so happy, but and let her just be herself. And typically it all just gets exposed. And then those conversations will happen where somebody will come to you and say, hey, what's up with this? And you're like, well, yeah, that's what I'm dealing with and stuff like that. So, but one thing I want to say about this is, and this is something that was kind of a problem with me, if you're worried about it, right? If they're saying that and you're worried that maybe you are or whatever, one, it doesn't matter. It's really irrelevant. Think back to how you felt during the relationship, right? The first question you want to ask yourself, how did you feel in the relationship? Do you want to have a better life? Do you want to continue living in that same trauma, that same environment forever? More than likely the answer is no. Do you even want to fight this fight, right? Do you really want, is it really worth it to get into this fight with your narcissistic ex, your emotionally abusive ex, your toxic ex, whatever category they fall into? Is it even relevant, right? Ultimately, who really cares? You need to focus on your recovery and improving your life. Getting wrapped up into what they're saying and what they're doing just pulls you down and delays your ultimate recovery. Now, I've said this before, on all of these stages, you have to do what you have to do, right? I can sit here and tell you, hey, you just need to let it go. Well, if you're not ready to let it go, you can't. Okay? And that's okay. If you feel like you need to, and you need to prove, you need to do it for your own sanity, then guys, you have to do what you have to do. All I'm telling you is that from my experience, it hasn't really accomplished anything, and all it did was delay my own recovery. So, think about that when you're going through it. You may have to do it. You may have to engage in some stuff and learn these lessons on your own. And I'm not going to criticize you for that. I didn't necessarily have somebody who was coaching me along the way on what to do and what not to do. But, in some cases they were, but they didn't have the context of actually going through this to really be able to provide that information and context to what we're all going through. All right, so when this happens, and it's going to happen because it always seems to happen, that at some point they're going to figure out that you're the abuser and they're going to blame you for being the abuser, just don't take the bait. Don't waste your time on it. If they say something, you don't even need to respond. Just blow it off and just be like, yeah, okay, whatever. Or don't answer. If it's through email, just ignore it. It's not worth it. What you need to do is you need to focus on yourself and rebuilding your own life. Rebuilding your life, rebuilding that foundation, that environment, and rebuilding it so that you are in a better position to take care of yourself and your kids through all of this. The sooner you figure that one out and the sooner you make peace with it, the better you're going to be and the better your kids are going to be. All right, so I'm going to wrap this up. So if you... in the comments below, whenever you were first accused of being the abuser, if you want to talk about how that made you feel and how you dealt with that, leave it in the comments below. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you like my channel, if it's helping you, please subscribe, and I will talk to you guys on the next video. So take care. Bye.